right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. I'm psyched about this one. Powerhouse in the community that's crushing it in many different aspects, and he's got a great story. So right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Pretty much everybody you know knows someone that's gone overseas and fought for this country or has dedicated their life to serving us. When you come out of the military, it's a very difficult thing to transition back to normal civilian life. During that process, you need people to help you along the way, whether it's getting benefits that you deserve or just getting back to a normal feeling of camaraderie, brotherhood, community, and that's what VetLife is all about. So please feel free to reach out to VetLife on Instagram or Facebook or go to vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, today I'm joined by Kelley Runion. Kelley, for the people that don't know you, let's talk a little bit about your background. Were you born and raised here in Michigan? Let's just start to create your story.
Yeah, right on, man. Sounds good. First off, I want to say I appreciate you having VetLife on there. I got a son who's overseas right now, and man, that's cool. Just to have something like that around here that speaks into those guys' lives. So it's really cool. You know what? I'm not from Michigan. I used to make fun of people from Michigan. All I knew about Michigan was that you guys are angry drivers because I'm from Kentucky, and the only thing I ever saw was those Michigan license plates and, you know, people in those cars flipping people off, and I hated you guys. So I spent the first 39 years of my life in Michigan, moved up here about 9 years ago to take a job at the church. But spent the majority of the early part of my life thinking I was going to be an artist of some kind. Ever since I was a little kid, an illustrator, something like that. Went to some art schools and ended up going to college for that, and spent a big part of my life thinking that's where I was going to be. And then, man, in my almost 48 years, I've seen a lot of change, and that was really when technology hit when I was about 17 or 18. I mean, unlike you young guys, I didn't grow up with the internet being a big part of my life, and, you know, there wasn't email and all that stuff. But once computers took over for that, it kind of changed everything. It kind of changed my heart for doing that. I like to work with my hands, and as cliche as the word organic is, I just like old stuff, you know. So kind of changed my direction, and but I still did that for a while. Did it for a career for a while, and always wanted to own my own business. And I opened up an insurance company of all things, and all my friends were like, "You're gonna be an insurance man, dude? Seriously, you're gonna put a tie on?"
What age is this?
Oh gosh, what was I when I did that? I think I was.
And just to record this on video, I wasn't born and raised here in Michigan either. I'm a Philly boy. I used to think the same thing about, I said, man, those Michigan people, I don't know what they're on. And now here we are, two Michigan boys.
Yeah. I'm still not sure about some of these guys, but I think I was in my, I think I might have been in my late 20s when I started that. I did get into the computer side of things with art. I got into printing for a while and did that. And it was, you know, it was cool. I was able to support my family. I had a couple kids at the time. And, but I just being an entrepreneur, my dad started a business after he retired, and just, you know, always wanted to have my own thing. So when that came up, that insurance thing came up, even though it doesn't make sense for a guy like me, I was the tattooed Harley riding insurance guy, and I didn't love it, man. I just, you know, I love the idea of it. So I did that for a while, and it just kind of sucked the life out of me just a little bit. I don't want to work to live, you know. I want to be able to just enjoy life and enjoy what I'm doing and be able to put my heart into what I'm doing. So my wife and I had come to this place in our life where we thought we were going to be missionaries. I didn't grow up a Christ follower. Grew up in a home that was amazing. You'd have thought my folks were you know, Christ followers. They're just great people. Knew who the Lord was and whatnot, but it wasn't a part of our lives or anything. But my wife, that's how our first date was, going to Easter Sunday church. I just did it because she was hot. I didn't care about going to church or anything. But
shout out to the wife.
Yeah. So that just kind of progressed, and after years of going to church and being around people that were doing things like that, we thought we were going to be missionaries. I just wanted an adventure, man. I remember reading, there's a guy in the Bible, his name's Paul, and that dude is just a badass. I mean, that guy, I always just thought, he was awesome. And I remember there's a part in there where God says that, well, I'll paraphrase too much if I say that. Paul was just a dude, but he was just doing amazing things, you know. And it's the first time in my life I really felt like, you know, I'm destined for more. I can do some amazing things too, and I just got to have the balls to do it and go for it. So we decided we're going to be missionaries, and I had a friend who was going to be a missionary, opening an MMA gym in Egypt, and I thought, well, that might be my way in, because we can circle back to martial arts. For me, it was such a big part of my life and changed everything for me. So he was going to do that, and I thought, well, maybe I'll go do something like that. And I had friends in Cambodia and all these places, and I thought, we're doing it, man. We just said, we want our kids, we had 4 at the time, we just said, I want them to see us have an adventurous spirit, because I don't want them feeling stuck where they are, and you know, you're going to go work that 9 to 5, whatever it is, whether it's a factory or whether it's something cool the rest of your life, and that's all you are. And I just wanted them to see an adventurous spirit in us, so we just said, we're doing it. I called a friend up here who was running 242 at the time, which was a small church, and he subsequently asked me to come up and check it out. I'm like, dude, I don't want to be a missionary in Michigan. Michigan sucks. So I just didn't want to do it, you know. So anyway, long story short, after a few trips up, we ended up coming up, and that's what brought us to Michigan. And
now, what on the timeline? You have 4 kids at this point. You and your wife come up together. How old are you?
I'm 39 when I moved up here.
39 when you come to Michigan. Got it.
I'll be 48 next month. So yeah, a lot of change.
I can't wait to tell the rest of your story, because we were talking a little bit before the podcast. I mean, you are absolutely crushing it today. So, and you're the happiest you've ever been. You're the most fulfilled you've ever been, and we're going to build up to that. So it's spectacular. So you move here to Michigan. You know, you take on 242, which you say at the time is a small church. I only know 242 is an absolute powerhouse in the community. You know, probably the largest network of people that I know around this area. I mean, it's massive. So talk us a little bit through that time. Was it what you thought? Was it different than what you expected? You know, let's take us through the journey of that, and then we'll go into the next chapter.
Yeah, right on, man. When I moved up, it was about 900 people, which by my standards at the time was big. You know, I'm from Kentucky, and the church I was going to prior to that was about 300 people, and the one before that was probably 30 people, and half of them had the same last name. So, you know, it was a lot different.
Meetings were held around the dinner table.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone come together, let's read.
Yeah, it literally was.
That's awesome, man.
It was like family dinner when you got together. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. But I left about a 300-person church. One of my best friends was the pastor of that, and it was pretty intimate. Just a bunch of, you know, vagabonds. I mean, just normal people. There was no pretension in that environment that we left. So we come up here, and it's about 900 people. We're officing out of just a little building over on Latson Road, and it was just a few guys on staff, and we met in high school, in the School for the Arts there in Brighton. Did that for about a year while this facility over here was being built, and I remember touring through that thing, and I was like, dude, this looks like Silence of the Lambs in here, man. People get murdered in this place. It was horrible. It'd been abandoned for I don't know how many years, a long time. It was, what was it called before that? Do you remember? You weren't even around here then.
No, I mean, I was around the area a little bit, but I lived in Heartland, so and I was young.
Yeah, it was like some kind of tennis club or something. It was, whatever. At the time, it was prominent, but it since turned into a place you go smoke crack or something. But they, redid it all, and that was like the turning point. It just blew up from there and just got huge. I did something called small groups when I moved up here, which is what I was doing back home, which was just gathering people together in smaller groups of dudes and hanging out. And I did that for a few years, and then eventually became the campus pastor of that church, which just put me in charge of that campus specifically. And it just grew and grew and grew. And I mean, there's goods and bads that come with a church being that big. I mean, you can make an impact in the community. There is just a natural tendency to lose some connectedness, but there's ways to try to work around some of that. And I still think that the church is maybe in this transitional phase of trying to figure that all out, where that many people can still be. How
many people do you think attend 242 at this point?
Man, I don't know now. I've been gone.
Or even at, let's say, the highest.
Yeah. On weekends, on each weekend, there was a time there where we were about 5,500 coming each weekend, but the average is people come about 2 times a month. So I would say there are probably 10 to 12,000 people, maybe 15,000 that would call that church home. But each weekend at the peak when I was there was about 5,500. They may be higher or lower. I know Corona's jacked that up, but prior to that, they may have gone higher or lower since I left. I don't know. Maybe me splitting helped them grow. But they were, it was about 5,500 was the peak. When I was there.
Yeah, that gives people relative perspective. I mean, you went from sitting around a dinner table, what it felt like, with the closest people trying to say, hey, let's better our lives. Let's find out how to win at this existence that we have, to having a mega facility where all of a sudden you're trying to find the same connectedness on such a large scale. That's a wild prospect.
Yeah, it is. Because you're not, in a smaller church, you show up, and if someone's not there, you're calling that dude up, be like, where you at, bro? But now, you don't necessarily see your friends, and there's ways to work around it, but just naturally putting schedules together and making things work, it just doesn't happen that easily.
I want to tackle a little bit into that spirit that you're referring to right now, because I think that's one of the most powerful things that you find in people that are leaders, that are natural business owners, that are entrepreneurs. There's a certain spirit. Were you born with that spirit? Was it from witnessing your father, live his life a certain way? Was it just literally the stories of Paul that opened your eyes to the potential that existed in front of you? What made you start chasing that feeling in your heart that exactly what I'm talking about now, that you said, I'm going to follow that. This, this insurance thing, it might be working out, it might be paying the bills, but it's not for me. This might be okay, but it's not for me. There's that thing you chase. When did you start to connect with that?
Man, that's... My dad sacrificed a lot for our family. He, and damn it, James, if I cry on this podcast, I'm going to...
Reality is more important than anything else, brother.
Yeah, man, I'm going to try not to. You caught me on an emotional day. I was driving around today. Sturgill Simpson's new album came out, so I'm listening to some bluegrass on the way over here in my new truck, and I got teary a couple times, humbled by where I'm at and the circumstances I'm in, and I started talking about my old man who just passed last year. I may get tore up a little bit, but anybody at 242 see me cry on stage plenty of times. My old man sacrificed a lot for our family. He and my mom, and he was a great dude and would have given anybody the shirt off his back his whole life. I mean, I watched him do a lot of things that most men wouldn't do for other people. And he always had a desire to have either lived in cowboy times or be a mountain man. And people say that, same thing about me because of the things I love. I should have been a mountain man, or I should have been a cowboy or something. I don't know, man. I just, I feel like sometimes I don't necessarily fit in the world that we live in. And he was like that. And he always had that desire for that. But he sacrificed for our family. He adopted his sister's kids when some bad things happened on that side of the family that he got away from. But he took these two young girls into our house and raised them as his own on one income, because my mom was always home. We just were raised that way. Mom is home with the kids. And I watched him put away the things that he would want. The man never drove a new truck his whole life. He always made sure my mom had what she needed and the kids had what they needed. And he did without. He took one trip to Colorado with me, which I'll never forget. And, maybe a deer hunt to Virginia or something free. He never was able to do some of those things. Maybe a little bit after he retired and the kids were all gone, started a business. But I always knew he longed for that type of stuff. And I got out and, I mentioned martial arts. I met my wife in martial arts class, Shotokan karate school. And, she's almost a black belt at the time. And, I came in and my dad was a boxer in the Navy. So I'd always been around combat my whole life. He taught us to, box when we were little kids, and it always was just a part of our household. And then I found, a legitimate I started, I don't know if you remember PKA or not from back in the old days, Professional Kickboxing Association. I had another friend of mine. We started working out with a guy in PK, and I think back to that. I had, we were in this dude's backyard, and we, jeez. Thinking about some of this, I haven't thought about this stuff in so many years. I had track shoes, and I unscrewed the spikes out of the bottom of them because they looked like martial arts shoes back in the day that all the dorks wore in, Black Belt magazine. So I had a pair of those and sweatpants, and we had, when I fought in the AAU, we had these gloves, we called them camel toes, and they were just super little thin pads. They make MMA gloves look like, 16 ounces. I mean, these are just little things. You get hit by these, they kill you. We had those, and we had some headgear that I don't even know what it was for. It wasn't legit martial arts headgear, and we had these things we'd strap to our chest, and we just would beat the shit out of each other. And then this guy would come in and kind of give us some technique and learned we learned timing and distance and learned some technique a little bit. So when I went into the real martial arts school, I had a little bit behind me already, so I was able to get in on what we called our competition team. And so I started doing, really well in that. And it was the first time in my life ever that I excelled above everybody else in anything. Like I always was like okay at sports. I'm not a ball guy. I don't even watch it. All I watch is fights. It was the first time I ever excelled. And then I started, I'd win regionally, and then I won nationals every year after I competed in the AAU, and it was an eye-opener for me. It's like, man, I can be awesome at something, I mean, it felt like where I was from and the people I was around, it's like you just live life and whatever comes at you, that's where you're at. And martial arts for me was a way for me to see that, hell, man, I can be tops in something. If I just get after this. It was a natural talent for me. But I also quit college at the time to compete, and so I spent 24/7 in our gym working out just to chase after being the best at the time. And there was, gosh, it's so embarrassing to even talk about this, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's part of it, and I don't really care anymore.
Your kids are going to value these stories. I'm telling you that right now.
Oh my gosh, this was a funny time, man. Like that was back in the the Jean-Claude Van Damme days, and so I didn't used to look like this. I used to be a good-looking dude, back in the day when I was 19, and. So we used to do these demos. We'd go to schools or businesses and we'd do these demos. We put these things on. And I don't know if this dude, I try to remember the story. I don't want to make it sound cooler than what it is, but I don't know if they sent, jeez, I'm actually going to tell this part. We had our gi pants on and no shirts and our belts around our neck. You know that shot, man? You've probably seen that before, right? So,
100%.
So me and one other dude, they took these shots of us like that. It's, oh my gosh. And they sent them off to people, and then I don't know if this dude was at one of those demos or not, but then they contacted us and wanted us to try out for doing these movies at the time. And at first I was like, oh, that's really cool. Thank God I had the awareness to go, I don't really want this to be in my life. I'm not going out to LA, and I don't know, I was a simple country dude, man. So I decided I'm not doing that. It was close to the same time because I thought about the UFC at that time was just so new, and my kids always, they're like, Dad, how would you have been at that? I'm like, I don't want to say out loud what I think I would have been at that, but it was more kickboxing at the time that I thought was going to be the route that I would go because I think it was UFC 2 or 3 had happened up to that point, and that was still that was crazy back then. It isn't like it is now. It's completely different.
No rules, time limits, weight classes.
Yeah.
Just get in there and fight.
And no one knew it was going to be what it was, right? No one knew that many years later somebody's going to be sitting here like you with a UFC shirt on. No one knew. It just seemed like just some wacky thing.
Kind of a sideshow thing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I freaking loved it. I'd go rent the VHS tape over and over and over again and watch it, but no one knew. And which a funny story is, Hoist Gracie made me do push-ups in front of a class one time for laughing at something. I'll tell you that story later. But anyway, so I thought PK was where I was going to go. I thought I was going to be a professional kickboxer, some type of fighter. And I remember going and talking to some dudes that did it. And, I think MMA is safer than kickboxing because you're not taking on so much damage. And all of the dudes that I interviewed, one was going blind, one had Parkinson's or the beginnings of Parkinson's. All of them punch drunk. And I was like, dude, I don't want to be that guy. I mean, one of them had, his eye was sagging and some of the stuff that you get from that. And I'm like, I don't want to do that, man. I had a school back home. I opened a school. My wife and I had one that we would teach local kids out of an elementary school. And hell, I ended up working for salsa from people's gardens more than I did them paying us for their classes just because we ended up falling in love with these kids. And I wanted them to have something, such a rural area. We wanted them to have something. And that felt good, man. It wasn't much of a business, but it felt good that, felt like we were doing something for these kids. They didn't have a whole lot, man. You either, pregnancy rates are high, drug abuse rates are high in more rural communities, so it was cool to give them something and give them an outlet and feel like they're being successful because anybody can find their level of success in martial arts. It's not like it's like basketball, like you're either good on the team or you're setting the bench. In martial arts, man, it's either, it can be me by myself with a bag and I can progress. I don't have to be the greatest fighter. I don't have to be the greatest at kata, which I hate anyway. You don't have to be the greatest at all these things. It's about you and how it makes you feel and how it makes you develop as a person, and how you treat others. So everybody could have that. I loved that. I loved that martial arts brought me ultimately to that place. And I felt like, oh, hey, I can start this and I can make this successful, and I can define the parameters of what success is. So I think that coupled with my faith and saying, hey, I can do more with my faith, it started making me think I can do more with everything that I've been blessed with and given, and by what I believe is from the Lord. And by no means do I want to sound overly righteous now. I'm still a tool, still, screw up, and still, looking back, I can see that that's what I was thinking at the time. I don't know that that's what I was thinking. It just seemed to progress that way. And looking back as an older dude, I can see that, God had his hand in that. But, and I just started applying that to, I feel like everything. Like, I want to be good at what I do, not for, bragging about what I do or feeling like I have to be the best. But if my boys will tell you, man, if I'll ask them when they leave the house, or I used to, I don't so much anymore. But if they were going to help somebody do something, I'd say, hey, what's number one rule? You think me being like a pastor and all that, it'd be like, oh, respect others and God's first and all that. Well, yeah, that's true. But it's to be the hardest working guy in the room. You're not going to be the best always, but be the hardest working dude. Whether that was wrestling, whether that was jiu-jitsu, whether that was building a wall or pouring a driveway, or it doesn't matter what it is. Be the hardest working dude there. Don't ever let it be said about a Runion that you didn't kick ass at what you were doing and do the best that you could do at doing it. You don't have to be the best at it, but if you push hard and work your hardest, then you very well could be. That happened for me with martial arts. I didn't know what it was. I tried stuff my whole life, man. I tried to be a jock in school. I tried to be a punk. I tried everything just to try to fit in, and it wasn't until martial arts that I found like I felt like I fit in a way that didn't make me have to fit in. I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but like I didn't want to be a part of like the clique of martial arts, but it gave me the confidence to be who I am. I don't walk in a room anywhere, even in this place full of guys that could probably murder me in seconds and not feel confident because you have a fighter spirit that my dad instilled in me. I don't even care if it's I shouldn't say that out loud because he would kill me probably. I don't care who it is. Like if it comes down to it, I'm going to give you everything I got, and I don't walk anywhere not confident anymore. I think that's one of the things that people might say about me is that, I'm confident. And that comes from being raised by the dad that I was raised by, and equally as important, it came from martial arts for me. It was huge.
So then a huge part of your story, which I can already hear, and I'm sure anyone listening can hear, is you fell in love with helping others because of the way that fills your life, whether through your martial arts, through religion, through anything that you did, you found that, man, I can not only better my life, but better other people's lives, which then in turn betters my life, which kind of crafts a lot of the paths that you probably took. Oh, this makes sense. If I do this, I can have an impact. I can be something. And I'm capable of doing that, which comes from the belief that you had in yourself. And martial arts probably expedited that process, made you realize, like, I know I can do this. Put me into a room and I can't tell you what the outcome will be, but I can control the effort.
Yeah.
And if I always give my best effort, I can be proud of that.
Yeah.
That's a good spirit that I think a lot of people need to get in touch with, is like, you might not be able to control certain circumstances, but you can control you. You can always give your best when you show up. So then let's build the chapter a little bit further. So you find the martial arts, you have a little school. It's more of just like for the feel-good feeling in your heart. You said you and your wife want to become missionaries. You come to Michigan. You become a part of a church that becomes mega successful. Let's start talking about the new chapters, because I just saw probably about a month back you were elk hunting for a month. You're having an incredible life now. Let's start opening that doorway. What made you finally make the decision to leave 242? And then what is your life looking like at this point?
Yeah, right on, man. My dad ended up with dementia, and man, that sucks. I'll just tell you, it's tough. My old man, if it tells you any, like, for me growing up, there was Fred Bear, John Wayne, my dad. I didn't have sports heroes and all the stuff that a lot of dudes have. I mean, I watched the Reds and whatnot, and Muhammad Ali. But for me, it was my old man and John Wayne. If that tells you anything about the kind of dude my dad was, he was just a man's man. And anything that is good in me is because I paid attention to that and tried to emulate that, and anything that's bad is because I didn't. I know he had his faults. Everybody does. I didn't see them. But he was just a man's man, and he cared about people and took care of people. And I promised him a long time ago that if anything ever happened to him, that I would take care of him. And this may sound morbid to some people listening to this, but I always told him I wouldn't put him in a home unless I had to, that I would let him die with his boots on in my house. So when he got sick, and it got to the point that, I worried about him and my mom living back in Kentucky, I was going back and forth a lot from the church. And that's one thing I can say about the people at that church is that they always supported me in the going back and forth down there. I would just have to leave sometimes like that. I mean, I'd get a call from my mom that something had happened. It wouldn't have mattered to me if they didn't. I would have told them to screw off, but I didn't have to because they love me enough to say, hey, yeah, he's going to go. It doesn't matter what it is. We're going to take care of whatever we got to take care of while he's down there. So that was amazing, and I'll always be indebted to them for that. My direct report was a guy named Kevin, and he took up for me on several occasions just for having to split, and I'll always appreciate that. But I promised him that, and I also promised him, because he asked me to make sure I take care of my mom, and so here's what happened. We moved him up here. We have a finished basement in our house, and we let them take that over as if it were theirs. My mom's still there now. But last July, my dad ended up passing, and leading up to that, I'll just say that when the church gets that big, it takes a lot of your time, a lot. And whether that was my fault for allowing it to, which I think it is, it's funny, I talked about being confident, and I'm always confident, but I shouldn't say the word always, because in that, I didn't go to college for the Bible. Most of the guys went to Bible college there. There was a part of me that always felt inferior to some of the staff that were there. I felt like what I brought to the table was being able to connect with people. I don't say that with any arrogance at all, but I feel like that if I had any role there, it was for people to feel like just a normal dude is doing this. I don't think ever from the stage I came off as pretentious. I hope not, because I don't have the bone of that in my body. I think that was my role at that place. But with that comes, I was there constantly. And, I told you before we started this, I didn't spend any Christmas Eves with my family. And I'm not woe is me, and that's part of the job, man. You sign on to it. That is what it is. I didn't, no complaints. But after a while, it wears on you. You're just not home that much. I missed watching my oldest son and my daughter go through some cool parts of their life because I was there a lot. And again, I'm not disparaging them for that. That I could have said, no, I'm not doing this at any point in time, and I just didn't. But it became clear to me with the way things were growing, and instead of just pushing past feeling uncomfortable in that environment, I don't like. This is going to surprise a lot of people that don't really know me that well but think they do. I don't like being around tons of people. That's just not my nature. I did well on the stage because it was fun and I felt like I was connecting with people. I think, what do they call that personality type? An ambivert, where you can be out there and up, and but it doesn't bring you life doing that, man. It doesn't give you energy doing that. It did for a short while, or it does for a short while, but then for me, if I could explain myself a little bit, I could go live in the mountains and come out when I wanted to see people, and I would be just fine. So that was, that had been sucking the life out of me for a while. And when Mom and Dad came up here, I was like, my dad's going to die. I mean, there's just no way around it. I know it's coming, and I'm not going to not see him and spend time with him and be there for my mom. So something came up that I hadn't talked to anybody about a job yet. I just felt like I was doing something wrong if I did that, but something compelled me. I met a guy who goes there, and I knew he was a president of a company, and I asked him what he did, and he's in the steel industry, and I build motorcycles on the side, so I love welding and building things and making things. So I thought, man, steel industry, I got a cousin who did that, and I think I could go into sales in that. So I ended up talking to this guy, go in, and everything was great. I feel like they loved me, I loved them, and so I said, you know what, I'm going to take that job. I'm going to do it, and I would make more money. I would have more time with family. It just seemed perfect. So I took the job, put in my notice, and in between starting that job and that time, I had to go back home for a funeral. And I'm back home at this funeral. It's my cousin's husband, who was only in his late 40s. He ended up passing. It sucked. I get a call from this guy, this president of the company. He's like, Runion, I got some bad news for you. I just got fired. I'm like, oh, man, that sucks for you, dude. He's like, and with that, they rescinded all the offers that I'd put out to people to come work for me. So I find myself away from my family in Kentucky at a funeral. Had just quit working for the church, and now I don't have a job. I was like, oh, and that sucks, you know. Tough spot to find yourself in at the time, 46 years old. Don't know what I would want to do next, because I struggled forever to be like, what do I want to do? I don't want to start a chapter of my life in my late 40s of something that I don't want to do and I couldn't see myself doing for the rest of my working career. I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. And there was a weird calm that I feel like I had during that time. I knew something was going to pan out. I just didn't know what it was. Not to say that there wasn't surface level anxiety with that. You know, it's a pretty scary spot to be in. But I didn't know what I was going to do. And I'm driving down the road one day back to Kentucky. I can't remember what we're doing. Maybe we're selling my mom and dad's house, or I was taking care of some business. And I had a buddy back home who'd been my best friend since I was 15 years old. He's like, Runion, he's a mortgage broker. He's like, you ever think about real estate? And everybody had given me a million ideas of things I could do. They're like, build motorcycles, you build killer bikes, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you can't make any money building motorcycles, you know? And he said, you ever think about real estate? And it was the first time that anyone had said anything to me that made any sense. I'd gone on job interviews, and no offense to you young 30-year-old guys, but I was interviewing with guys your age, and I'm like, man, I don't want to be arrogant, but I feel like I'm jumping through hoops for you young dudes. Like, I've already done that. I feel like I bring more to the table than having to, you know, appease some kid. Not that you're a kid, but I guess you can maybe understand what I'm saying. Imagine if you had some 21-year-old kid you're interviewing with him, he's asking you questions, and you're having to, like, do the interview routine. I'm like, this is dumb. I feel like a dancing monkey, you know, doing this. I'm like, this is not me at all. And he said that to me about real estate, and I'm like, and it was the first time. He's like, Runion, I literally would trade what I'm doing right now to be in your shoes. You know that many people up there. They inherently are going to trust you anyway. And, you know, you're good at networking and speaking and being in front of people. He's like, you would kill it in this. And I'm like, man, that kind of makes some sense. So, you know, I came back and I talked to a guy with Kelley Williams in Kentucky who graduated a year before me. And he told me about, you know, how they run their business. And he told me that one of their things that they live by is God, family, then business. And I'm like, that sounds like bullshit. Like somebody would just say that just to, you know, make you want to be a part. It's like when you go buy a car and you know, the dudes got the ichthus fish on their office door. You're like, right, dude, sure. Well, you try to screw me out the back door on some part of the deal. Which, by the way, I just bought a truck at Bob Maxey Ford, and those dudes actually are Christ followers. The two dudes that I worked with, I'm like, I can't believe this is real. Those dudes were so awesome, treated me so well, and were believable Christ followers. It may have helped that I threatened them not to try to screw me on the deal, but nevertheless, so I did it. I went for it, and I ended up talking to Dominic Comer at Kelley Williams up here in Brighton, and I fell in love with that little dude, and I hope he's listening to this and hears me call him little dude. He's running a great business there, and he has it set up to where, so from day one, I called it Kelley Runion Real Estate Group, giving the impression that it was bigger than what it was by calling it group, knowing that it was going to be. I just had a confidence with this that was just through the roof. I've never been so confident with anything in my life except for, you know, walking into the ring for a fight. And it was almost a level of arrogant confidence, not an arrogance that would be, you know, I don't know, maybe you can't even use the word arrogant, but you know what you don't walk in as a fighter into something not knowing that I'm going to whip your ass. Like I would get out here I would think I would kick Josh Parisian's ass. That guy would kill me in 2 seconds. He outweighs me by 100 pounds. But I would go into that if something happened, like Josh says something bad about my mom, I'm going to freaking kill you, dude. I mean, that's just all there is to it. Cause I'll just find a way. And Josh, if you're hearing this, I don't think I can beat you up. But you have that level of confidence, right? You have to have it. Everybody that's a fighter knows that. And I think that for me, if I could circle back just briefly, being a fighter is a big part of what changes everything, walking into every room and getting into any situation. For me, it changed my life and how I think. So that being said, met with Dominic and decided I'm doing this, man. I'm going to go for it. That guy had confidence in me from day one. It still does, and still is a big support for me. But they allow me to run Kelley Runion Real Estate Group, what almost feels independent of Keller Williams. I don't have to put, I don't have to be Keller Williams, Kelley Runion Real Estate Group. On my signage, I do. There's Michigan laws, but they let me run my business, and they train me to give me the confidence to be able to do the things that I need to do. And because of that, because of the system that they have in place and them letting me do my own thing, it has been literally, it's been a year and a half prior to September, which I took off, and we can talk about some of the things I like to do if you want, but I took off for a month. But prior to that, aside from a couple builders, I was the number 5 or number 7 real estate agent in all of Livingston County. Man, that's unbelievable to me.
In a year and a half, in a business that is completely built on networking and building clients for a long period of time and making connections within communities and families, within a year and a half, you to be in the top 30 would be unbelievable, and here you are finding yourself in the top 10. That's incredible.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. It's if anybody hears this, don't hear me bragging about that, because I'm dumbfounded by it every single day. You said something earlier that I think is the key to, because people ask me all the time, like, what are you doing to be so successful at what you're doing? I don't disregard the fact that people know who I am because of the job. I was on stage in front of thousands of people every week, and it would be silly for me not to think that it has something to do with it. But I also would hope that it's who I am that people saw when I was on the stage that helps me with that. But it is the belief system, and I've put it into play already. The first clients I ever had, I could have sold them a house on day one, but the first thing I said to them was, I can't sell you this house. I would not sell this house to my kids right now. I can't sell you this house. There's things that are wrong with this house that you can't see. And that resounded strongly with them, and it further solidified the idea that if I put everybody else first in this, that ultimately I'm going to end up doing well. I'll be successful in this. I've had people hose me in deals already, but I'm just not going down that route. I'm not going to be dirty. I'm not going to work for the buck. I went down to show my truck to Dominic today, and I picked up checks that were in there that I kind of forgot I had, and it was a moment for me, a realization, like, I can't believe how blessed I am in this. And I feel like I've enjoyed, aside from a couple, there have been a couple, clients that they might not even say great things about me as well. I don't want to bullshit you on here. There have been a couple that I, probably would have fired as clients after having been in it for a little while. But predominantly, it's been an unbelievable experience each time because I want them to be first. Now, I'm going to make mistakes along the way as I do this, like you do with anything else. Even if I'm seasoned in this, I'm sure I'll screw up. But having the confidence to go into this in any conversation, in any deal with anybody, no matter who they are, how long they've been doing it, not to get railroaded by people, which is one thing I can't stand, is that. That's just bullying mentality. I don't tolerate that stuff. If I see it happening to somebody else, I'd say something about it, much less with me. You're just not going to do that with me. I don't care who you are. I don't tolerate it. And because I don't do it to other people. John Wayne said in the movie The Shootist, he says, I won't be wronged, I won't be insulted, and I won't be laid a hand on. I don't do these things to other people, and I won't have them do it to me. You can simplify that if you want and take out the violence part if you want, but ultimately it comes down to I'm not going to tolerate it, and we can handle that with words. But I'm confident to not if we don't. So I carry myself that way, and it allows me to put other people first because I do know that about myself and feel that way. And I put other people first in what we're doing. And so far, man, it's been awesome. And I can lay my head down on the pillow at night. I don't have to feel like a dirty salesman because I hate that. I can't stand that mentality.
I think it was genius that you called it the Kelley Runion Real Estate Group because we were talking again before the podcast, and I'm going to have you go into that. You've brought in the right people to make your company continue expanding and have a group of people around you that you trust to the fullest to make sure that every part of your brand is represented in the best light. Let's talk a little bit about the people that you've brought on board, and that's going to propel the company to be even more successful in 2021.
Yeah, right on, man. I appreciate you saying that. First and foremost, I'll shout out to my guy, Mike Luce. Mike Luce is, he works for the city of Howell. He's well-known, well-respected. He's a great guy, family guy, and a good buddy prior to coming to work for me. He's just driven, man. He's a trainer at True Fit, and he's just an all-around good dude, and we share a lot of the same ideas. We like a lot of the same things. no offense to diversity and political viewpoints or ideology, but the older I get, the less diverse I want to be in who I'm surrounded by. I will fight and die for your right to have your stupid liberal opinion. That's fine. You want to be a liberal doucher? Cool, whatever. But I don't want to be around it all the time, right? It is what it is. Again, all respect to you, unless you're killing babies, and then I have no respect for you at all. And I'll say that again, unless you're killing babies, then I have no respect for you at all. Other than that, diversity in what we believe is cool with me. The country was founded on those ideas and those principles. Unless you're etching away at my constitutional rights, then you can screw off again as well, and then we're going to fight. But I didn't mean to go off on that tangent so much. But Mike and I are a lot alike, and I appreciate that. Not just in like political viewpoints, but just in ideology more, because politics can get muddy. But in ideology, we are. Puts his family first and wants to make a better life for himself when he retires from working for Hal. He wants to have something in place to change his life. Like, my life's different now than it's ever been. And I don't say braggadociously that I make a lot of money, but I can do things that I couldn't do before. I don't think money buys happiness, but if you're content already and you can do some things, it can change your life. I don't care what anyone says. I grew up my whole life saying money doesn't matter. I didn't chase it. I thought it was evil. Well, it doesn't have to be. It's who you are that decides that. So anyway, back to Mike. Brought him on. He's doing absolutely amazing. He's a buyer's agent for me, so I get to do the listings, and Mike goes out and takes buyers and shows them houses and does all that. He's doing great. I hired my daughter, who is in training right now, to be my admin. She's 20, almost 24, and I just found out before I left, or was it before? It was after I got back from Colorado, I think, that I'm going to be a grandpa. She got married in February. Yeah, it's crazy.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's weird is what it is, man. But, it's cool. We don't call it grandpa where I'm from. It's papaw. So I'm going to be a papaw as long as she doesn't try to pull one of those pee-pop weird names or something. I saw a meme the other day. It says, what the hell's happened that some kid pronounces your name wrong, and for the next 30 years of your life, you're pee-pop?
I saw the same one. I was cracking up.
So
or
funny.
PP, or there's all kind of things that you said,
Yeah.
oh, man, please don't bestow upon me one of those names.
Yeah, I said I won't answer to it. I'll tell your kid to leave my house if they try to call me that. So, yeah. So, anyway. She's going to be my admin, and she's training, and getting her to the point that she can take care of all the paperwork and all the computer stuff, because I loathe that part. I like to talk to people and help them through that process, but I don't want to do the stuff on the computer. So she's going to do that. I've got an 18-year-old son who is waiting for the code to get his license now. I've got a 21-year-old son who's serving overseas right now, and in the last 2 or 3 months of his deployment will start to study. So when he comes back, he's read more books on business since he's been over there than I've ever read in my life. He's excited, fired up, ready to rock and roll. And I've got a 16-year-old boy who lives and dies to hunt and fish. He is one of the best outdoorsmen I've ever seen in my life at 16 years old. He has hunted since he was just a little kid, 3 years old, sitting in a deer stand with me, but now he's been to Colorado and elk hunts, and the kid he just got a natural gift for that. Last year he was hunting on his own and just was doing some still hunting, which is just kind of where you walk around the woods with your bow, and found a place to sit down and found trails to come together. He shoots a nice buck that he called in off the ground, which is kind of a big deal. And I say that just to say he's not like just a typical kid that likes to hunt. It's just, it consumes him in a not unhealthy way. Killed 2 ducks last night with one of his buddies, as a matter of fact. He loves it. But we want to maybe, when we end up doing something in Colorado or Montana, I need to be out west. It's the only place I've ever been that just never left me. I just need to be in the mountains. I love it. It's, So we're going to try to get it to where we build this team here, and then we do it again out there, and I'll just kind of go back and forth between, Michigan and there. So he's going to do that, and we want to have him kind of on the land side. He wants to be in land sales and whatnot. So I'll be surrounded by family, and it'll be cool.
That's the American dream, man. I mean, do something you love, make money doing it, and have your time be your own boss, and be surrounded by the people that you love and appreciate. I mean, that is the American dream, and a lot of people don't realize that it's possible for them. But not only have you realized it's possible, you're acquiring it, and you're also planning for the future. I saw it resonate in your eyes when you spoke about being out west and living in the mountains and having that terrain to explore. Like, that's where you belong. I can see it. You can feel that energy, So let's, if you want to, let's talk a little bit about what 2020's been like for you. I mean, it's been a wild year. It's something that I feel like we should capture.
Sure.
As far into it as you'd like to go, as much as you'd like to speak, or as little as you'd like to. But no matter what, in the history books, this will be a year that we're going to have to remember. We're going to have to take lessons from. We're going to have to, we needed brave people now more than ever. We need people that are willing to have some guts now more than ever. Kind of a lot of the things that you alluded to earlier in this podcast. So what has 2020 been like for you?
Yeah, man. I think I referenced this quote when you and I were just talking earlier before the podcast, and said that the only thing that it takes for evil to exist is for good men to do nothing. And I think we've seen, I'm just going to preface everything I'm getting ready to say with, if you are liberal leaning, you're going to be offended by what I say. I don't care if I offend you. I don't seek to offend you, but I'll just tell you right now, if you're listening and you lean that way, just know that I'm probably going to piss you off in what you're saying or what I'm saying.
And again, anyone that's watching this podcast, like, you're choosing to absorb this content, and we need reality. We need raw things. We need people to be genuine. Anyone can put on a mask and pretend to be one person in society. We need more real, challenging dialogue to progress ideas through proper filters, because they are raw. So if you choose to be bothered by content, you are choosing to bring that into your life. So, I mean, anyone on my podcast is always welcome to speak about any ideology out there in the raw format, because in my opinion, that is extremely valuable.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you talked about the American way, and that is the American way. We have to have the freedom to be able to talk. What I've found this year more than ever is that as a conservative person, and I mean conservative person even if you take politics out of it, as a conservative person, I'm less likely to be a loudmouth, boisterous douche. I'm probably going to keep my opinions more reserved, because that's a conservative nature. What I found on the left, and I know that's a political adjective, but what I found on the left and with the liberal mentality, as we've seen this year, is we've seen a complete and utter dissension from what they would have said years ago that they believe. It's whatever for everyone. When they were fighting for, gay rights and so many other things, it was like, just give us the ability to be who we are without feeling a persecution. Well, now what we're seeing is just the opposite. I will tell you right now that I think that, and I'll just use this as just a point. I think the BLM is terrorists. I can dig into that in full detail, but I think we're seeing things like right now with the Antifa and BLM and so many other things, that if I don't believe what you believe, that there's going to be not only verbal repercussions to that, but now the threat of physical repercussions. And if it's going to be that, then I say bring that and let's get that done, because I'm willing to fight for what I believe. You're willing to front to fight for what you believe, but it's bullshit. It's the one little skinny dude behind his other friends that's won't stop jaw wagging when there's a confrontation, when you don't really want it. That side doesn't really want it. They're fronting in a way that I can't stand. I've never been able to stand that mentality. And I'm seeing it now, and I'm seeing it, in coastal areas. I don't see it here, because if it happens here, I'll shoot you. I'll just tell you straight up. If you're going to hurt my family, you're going to hurt my friends, you're going to hurt my community, I will shoot you, 2 in the chest and 1 in the head. I won't tolerate that at all. And I know there's a lot of people that think the way I think. I don't ever want to hurt somebody. I told you before this podcast, I live with some memories of things that I did to people in fights and being young and stupid, that I can't stand the thought of hurting somebody. It literally... I was in tears with my family a while back because I was so irate with some of the things that were happening. And when BLM was going to be up in Howell and Antifa was going to be there, I'm not going to be the guy up front where you can see me fighting against that. But what you didn't see was I was sitting down at Aberrant in front with my truck parked next to me with everything in it I would need if something bad happened, because I'm not tolerating it. I won't. I just will not tolerate it. And my wife asked me, she said, Kelley, what if it gets to the point that you literally have to do something? I'm like, Carrie, I hate this. And this is what brought me to tears, because my whole family was there, because I had to explain this to my kids, my wife, my mom. I said this: if men are not willing in this era to stand up to the things that are wrong and evil, and in spite of all of the repercussions to this, the fact that I might not get to see my family again, the fact that I might end up in jail unless we finally get to the point where we're not willing to even recognize that legal authority anymore, because it's so unconstitutional, which I think, we skirted that line already, and I hope it doesn't get worse. then I'm willing to do that as much as I don't want to. I mean, to me, that is, and I'm not saying I'm courageous and brave, but gosh dang it, yeah, I am saying that because that's part of being a freaking man's man and standing up and saying, I'm not going to tolerate this bullshit. I'm willing to stand up for it no matter what the consequences are. A lot of men fought and died for our freedoms that we have way back beyond. And I think that's part of the problem. There's not a whole lot of younger people these days that have family that they know that fought in World War I and II and the Korean War. You know, they didn't see us actually fight for freedom. You know, I believe that the Vietnam War, I hate that for our men, especially my dad, who was there as well and has to deal with, or had to deal with a lot of the ideas of that. That's when we saw the political nature of war start to happen, because, you know, that war was, it shouldn't have happened. I'm not disparaging our soldiers in that at all. I mean, our men that fought and died for that were brave men and women. I just hate politics involved in war. World War I, II, and the Korean War, that was fighting for our freedom. They don't have relatives anymore, or weren't around them that they saw that went through that. I did. And they don't know what freedom really looks like. And the freedom that we have in this country compared to others, I mean, you look... Jorge Masvidal's interview was absolutely unbelievably on point. That dude came from he knows what socialism is. He lived through that. That dude's willing to stand up and say the things that he said. And if you have not watched that and you wonder what I think that guy is, I think he's a doucher sometimes. I think he's fun for the sport because he gets it going. But what he said there was so real. We have freedoms in this country that people don't recognize. And when I see those things infringed upon by young people, I don't want to become that old dude that's so bent against young people. But when I see people like when I see people that are so charged without any evidence to back up what they believe, it drives me nuts. If you ever go listen to, what's his name? Charlie Kirkland, is that his name? Is that his last name? I'll get it wrong. Sorry if you're hearing this. If you ever watch these guys do the interviews on the streets with these young people that think they believe what they believe, and these moron liberals, there's really no argument other than an emotional outburst. They don't have any data to support what they believe. I mean, the whole I hate Trump thing. Look, I don't like Trump as I don't want to sit and listen to him talk all the time, but as a president in my lifetime, are we still good? In my lifetime, I've never seen a president do more good for this country in my lifetime, for our minority communities, for our businesses, for things that I can actually show you on paper that I believe. I never liked watching that dude on a show, but I didn't hire him as a pastor, and I didn't hire him as a politician. I hired him as a president of this country to run the business of this country. And I think the dude is killing it, more so than even people that on the conservative side would say Ronald Reagan and so many other folks. But as far as the things that I believe and the things that I want to see happen for our country and the freedoms that we have, I think that guy is doing absolutely amazing. Would I love to see our political parties be not just two? Yeah, Jo Jorgensen. I think that lady is phenomenal as a libertarian. I would vote for her in a heartbeat after these 4 years with Trump. I want to spend the next 4 years. Talking about a libertarian party and talking about someone like a Jo Jorgensen, and let us build up to the and beyond this system that we've created, that we need some diversity in that, but we can't do that, right here at election time. That's what always happens. That Libertarian Party steals votes from one side or the other, and we don't have any traction behind any of that. But anyway, I derailed just a little bit. I'll just say this to summarize, and then you can ask anything about my ideas on it, because I'll tell you straight up whether you like them or not. The biggest thing that people talk about all the time is, and want to hear about is what I think about your masks and what do I think about businesses closing. And I will tell you this, when this first thing got kicked off and we didn't know what was going on, I wore a mask. I had my family wear a mask because I didn't know. It wasn't because some political party told me to do something. It wasn't because the liberal knuckleheads in the media told me to do it. It was because I just didn't know. And I wanted to make sure my family was safe. But then when science, actual data, started to prove that it made absolutely no sense, I have not worn a mask since then. I just don't wear one because what we're dealing with, and I'm not going to try to sound like a doctor, and I don't want to argue with someone about this, because I would fight physically for your right to wear that mask. Because whether you know it or not, people did and do fight for your right, for the freedoms to do what you want. But when you start to dictate with a lack of science, if there were science behind it and data behind it, I would be on board. It would be a law. But when it's just somebody's idea, and I believe it's politically motivated, I really do, but because I can't find any other reason for it, because if you look at data, it just does not support wearing that damn mask. It's a freaking virus. It's not going away. I'm not taking a flu shot. I don't take them. The one damn time I took a flu shot was the sickest I've ever gotten in my life. The idea behind vaccines, that's probably another topic for another time. But if you look in this country at the increase of vaccines and then the increase of cancer, autism, and so many other things, you have to be stupid to not look at that and say that there's some correlation. I'm not injecting fetal tissue and chemicals into my body that are horrendous. I'm not going to do it. I won't do it. And if they dictate that we have to do it, that's when war happens, because people aren't going to tolerate that. You're even going to have hippies picking up ARs then, because they're not going to do that to their kids. So I'm not taking that vaccine. That being said, if you will say, hey, there's a vaccine for this, you've just admitted that it's a virus. There are not vaccines for diseases. That's called a cure. It's like people have thrown out logic and reason in this. It's a virus. I'm going to get it. You're going to get it in some way, shape, or form. Chances are we're going to be asymptomatic, but we also could get it, just like the flu. The numbers for the flu are, you can't even compare COVID to the flu. It's an insult to people who have lost family members because of it. And if you've lost a family member to COVID, my heart breaks for you and with you. I've spent my whole life caring about people and doing things for people. So you can't tell me that I don't care about people, which is why I'm not wearing a mask when I'm in public. That is not the case. I care about everyone. It is stupid at this point in time. It's like you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. You're not going to dictate that to me without data to prove it. So I don't wear one. I don't cause a scene where I go unless somebody is a prick, and then it's a little different story. But I don't cause a scene. I'll simply walk out and not give your business my money. The same thing happened to me at Uptown Coffee this morning. I've been in there for 3 days in a row getting a cup of coffee. One lady decides that she's going to tell me that I can't wear it, and you know what? I said, okay. And I turned around and walked out, and I had people say, hey, I'll get you a coffee and bring it out to you. And I said, I don't want you to give them your money at this point. I had another guy say, hey, the people we do trade with in China, because apparently that's what he does, don't wear these anymore. There's nothing to dictate that this happens. But guess what? I'll simply be on a podcast with my friend and tell you that Uptown Coffee tells you got to wear a mask. I'm not going in there anymore, even though I'll tell you that their coffee is my favorite, and now it sucks that I'm going to drink Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I can't get their coffee, but I'm not going to give you my money if you're going to rip me of my freedom to not wear that stupid thing, because people go, well, it's just about a mask. It's not just about a mask. And if you think it is, then you're not paying attention, man. Study your history books. I love history. As a student in school, I didn't, but as an adult, I do. I love history. We are repeating so much history. It's unbelievable. We have less freedoms now than we had when they had the freaking Tea Party, for Pete's sake. You are robbing people of their freedoms just a little bit at a time. And if you incrementally take that control time and time again, we're going to find ourselves where things don't seem like a big deal anymore. You know, as a Christ follower, I believe certain things that the world doesn't. And we have seen the deterioration because of the implementation of certain things that become okay in society. There are no social mores anymore. When I was a kid, we knew what social mores were. There were certain things you didn't do because you get your ass kicked in school because of it. There aren't those anymore. Everything seems to be okay now. And now that's where we start seeing people having conversations about pedophilia being okay. And I'm just like, dude, I'll still kill you for that. If I see that, I will still kill you. And there's plenty of people like me that believe that. A silent majority. I am praying that that is reality. I've been saying it for a while, and I think it is. I think because the only place that we see the majority of this stuff is coastally, but when we start to see it infringe into areas like Little, Howell and places like that, that's when it worries me a little bit, because I'm afraid at some point in time that a liberal idea is going to be a majority, because we've had so many generations of people that have been brainwashed for years, for their life, most of our students. My daughter came back from college, raised in my house, and you can imagine how conservative my house is. This has been years ago. She came back from college the first year, and she thought Bernie Sanders was the man. And I was like, oh, God. I was like, all right, let's do this, because I didn't want to tick her off right off the bat, And so we just started talking about socialism in general. And I didn't call it socialism. I just talked about what it was. And I gave that idea of, in school, you got people that are making A's, C's, and F's. if we're going to take from the A's and we're going to give some to the C's to bring them up a little bit, and we're going to give some to the F's to bring them up there, at some point in time, what's going to happen with those people that are making A's? They're going to get sick of working for everybody else, and that's when you start getting down into the C's, and then everybody gets lazy, and then you're in F's, and you have a failed society after about 40 years, which is the natural lifespan of socialism before it breaks down completely historically. We talked about it. She's like, that doesn't make any sense. My daughter is the most conservative person now you've ever met in your life. I mean, she does not care to piss you off and tell you vaccines are going to kill everyone and that socialism is the biggest crock of crap ever, because guess what? She got past just the media bullcrap she was being fed. She got past the mob mentality and started doing some homework on her own. Dude, she's on my team now. I mean, for sure. And but I'm afraid that there's not a lot of family left that are willing to have those types of conversations and speak truth into the lives of young people. And, you know, being going to be a grandpa soon, I'm just thinking about that kid's life and what it begins to look like. And I'm willing to sacrifice something now, whatever that is, or whatever it is, to maintain the freedoms that we have in this country, to still be the United freaking States of America, where we can have freedom to not have it, what we do next, dictated by a party for political reasons. I'm willing to do it, and I hope more people are willing to.
And another thing that we should actually talk a little bit about is there's like a mental health crisis across this country, and that could come down to the breakdown of morals, breakdown of family unions, breakdown of just structure that used to create like a certain work ethic in people, a certain character and integrity level. Like, I mean, when you did something that was out of line, there was consequences, there was punishment. You couldn't just complain about, well, I don't like that rule. There was structure in place, and that was part of the American spirit, you know. And you grew up, you know, generations ahead of me, but in the way of
generations. Oh, dude.
I'm 32, so we're getting there. But I mean, there was literally an American spirit that we all embodied, and we believed in these things. And now all of a sudden, you have a mental health crisis. You have people everywhere that are outraged and up in arms and thinking emotionally versus critically thinking. Like, there's not a lot of critical thinkers anymore. Generally speaking, if you just bombard someone with the right fear tactic long enough, or you just pound them with emotional messages, they just get on board. Maybe it's easier. As a gentleman who has such a diverse background, who has spoken to people from the religious side, who has seen the family structure, you just told a perfect example of your daughter growing up in one household, goes off to college, comes back with a different ideology. Like, I've been to, you know, China and some of the bad parts, and I tell you what, if you think America sucks, you need to travel. You need to go see the way that some people live in this world, and you'll look at this place completely differently. And a lot of these younger kids don't have an appreciation for the country and for the ideology, and like they're offended by the Constitution, and they're bothered by these things, which, don't get me wrong, I mean, this is not a perfect world, and we all would like to do better, but we are much better off than many places. What do you think can be done, or how do we start moving the needle in a better direction as somebody that has seen, you know, the degradation, I'm going to call it, of our society?
It's a good adjective. I tell you what, man, I know by my own experiences that people want to belong to something. You know, people want to belong to something, and they want to feel like they fit in somewhere. Some people less than others. I would say less than others. I feel that way about myself less than others. But if I really look at that critically, that's probably not true. That's probably a characteristic that I want to have. That sounds like a mountain man, but you need to feel like you belong. I'm going to give an example that. I don't want this example to create any kind of uproar, so I don't say it with even my own opinion of anything. But I ended up talking to somebody. I'm going to try to leave out some details. I talked to somebody who their family was concerned. It was a younger person that they were gay. Whatever. I mean, if that's what you're going to do, I because of my belief in what the Bible says, and I don't get to pick and choose what's right and wrong, I believe that that's sin. It is what it is. I believe that. I don't pass judgment on the person for that. I still love you for that, and I don't believe in making laws against that and all that kind of silly stuff, but that's just what I believe. And I unapologetically believe that. I believe that sin in our lives that goes without confrontation ultimately leads to our stepping further away from the Lord and stepping further away from God's plan for us. And I do it in my life, man. And I know the times that I'm far away from God, I'm just not the same person. But I'm going to step away from just the my belief in that, because I think ultimately it is a lack of living by the standards that God sets for us. I think that's the root cause of all of it. But to get into the more humanistic side of it, people want to belong somewhere. And when you grow up without a dad in the house, when you grow up without a real family unit, and I'm not saying those houses that dad's gone and that you don't have any choice, I'm not saying you don't have a chance to make it in that, because that's not the case. But when family is not the core of who we become, then I believe that there is even more of a longing to belong somewhere, because, absent fathers are the root cause of the majority of things we find in our minority communities, just absentee fathers. And that just goes to prove in low income or minority communities where you see higher crime rates and higher imprisonment rates. I don't believe that's because of racism. I think systemic racism is the biggest crock of shit. And I believe that is worse for a minority community than these people that feel like they're white saviors are going to fix that. If you convince people that there's systemic racism, that means the system is rigged against a minority, and then they feel like they already are going into that with a foot on their head, and they can't make it. You don't even talk about the things that will help them make it, that are out there and in place to help them make it. You've already begun to defeat yourself before you've even started. You don't even get the chance to develop that strong mentality going into anything. You become opportunistic, and those dads being missing, whether it's minority communities or non-minority communities, I believe have degraded the family structure down to it doesn't even need to exist anymore. When you're letting, well, I don't want to get into that. Because I don't think it's that prominent of a point. But when you're raised without that, you long for something. And I'm watching these young people, and I'm watching these. And I shouldn't just say young people. I'm seeing people that are joining and becoming a part of something without any idea of what they really believe. If you watch some of these interviews with people in at these BLM rallies, whether they're part of BLM or not, or you watch them at these Antifa, you can't look at those people and say that there's not something mentally wrong with you, that you think what you're doing is justified. Because I would like to just sit down and have a conversation with some of those people, because the conversations I've seen people have with people, and now granted, conservative media and conservative Instagram posts, which I like because I think they're funny, but they also infuriate me, so I stopped watching a lot of them. There's just not a foundation for you to believe what you believe. I will tell you this, if it comes down to it and that things become physical in this country, I feel like I could defend and justify intelligently why I'm willing to pick up one of my firearms and use it as a weapon and not just for fun. I could literally tell you what I'm willing to fight for. I don't feel like that the craziness that's happening in this country right now, I don't feel like the left in that can make an argument for the insanity that is ensued around this country. You can't do it. If you feel like what BLM is doing around this country and Antifa is doing and burning things down and accosting people because they're white, you're insane. I don't even know how else to say that besides that is insanity. There is nothing foundationally that would make you think that that's okay. No one's held guns to your head. Anyway, we could go on all day long about that stuff. I think that people want to become a part of something so bad and want to fit, that you're seeing people show up at these rallies with no idea of what they believe or why they believe. They only know that the hate Trump train is insane. And I'm not here for a Trump commercial. I'm just not. But I just believe that there's not. You don't have data points to say this is why I believe what I believe. You just want to be a part of something. And I think that there is, you talked about mental illness in this country. I take medicine for ADHD. I will tell you right now, if I don't take that medicine, I know I'm not squared away, man. I'm just not. I'm not ashamed to admit that anymore. I actually went to, I went to Rochester to when I first got diagnosed with that at 40 years old, because I was embarrassed and I didn't want people here to know that I struggle with that. My whole life I have. If I don't take that medication, I'm just not me. I grew up with a temper, and I don't think straight. I can't compartmentalize my thoughts. It's humbling to admit that I have to have medication for that, but it is what it is. I'm not ashamed to admit that. And I think about the level that I have, and it's not that big. I could make it in society. I'm not going to fall out and have to be, institutionalized or anything, but I'm not the healthiest version of me, not the clearest thinking version of me, not the successful version of me. How many people struggle with something like that and substantially higher that just get to be a part of society and don't have anybody holding their feet to the fire to get better or say, hey, look, I recognize in you this. You're not the same, and this is how many people throughout the world are like that. It's probably just an immeasurable number of people, right? They don't have anything to hang on to. They're struggling to feel like they fit, or because dude, it is what it is. I'm just gonna say it, man. If you look at the lineup of people that get arrested from Antifa and BLM, dude, those are like some freaky dudes, right? I mean, they're not people that are squared away that are going to work every day. Because one, how the freak are you going doing these things every day if you got a job? It's usually, some pretty freaky people. When I look at freaky people these days I used to say green hairs, but now I know some pretty cool people that got some green hair, but so I don't say that anymore. But if you look at the people that are like the fringe people that aren't just doing something because they think it's cool, but they're doing it to fit in, the dudes that you see walking up and down the road here in Howell that have 86 chains on, and they just, you know what I'm saying? My heart breaks for them. I used to be young and be like, look at that freaking idiot. My heart breaks for them now because I know what they're doing. I know that that's a cry for, I need to fit in. And if I can fit in in this, weird community where I don't know, emos or whatever the heck they call them these days. I don't even know. It was goth when I was young. Like, I'm just using that as an example, just reaching out for something and need to belong somewhere. I know if Antifa or BLM or any of these other organizations that are doing this crazy crap, if they feel like they can belong and fit in and have some kind of purpose, it's human nature for them to want to fit in and feel like they have people around them that are supporting their ideas and their mindset, just like I do on my side, but they feel like they've got something here. They're going to belong and become a part of that. That's why you see all the interviews with these guys on the street and they don't know what the heck they're doing. They just want to be there, right? So I think that's one of the biggest problems is there's nothing foundationally at home that helps set precedents for what I believe and why I believe it. Like, I've changed my mindset on things throughout the years, but not a whole lot. I have a foundation set and I can see why. I can explain to you why I feel certain ways about certain things. Even if they're controversial, I can still tell you this is why I believe that. I'm not going to be so closed-minded that I don't believe that this can happen just because the news tells me that can't happen. I believe what I believe. It's thought through. I'm not going to stand on just a sponge of an idea. I want to stand on a rock of why I believe the things that I believe. And I don't believe on the left that there is that. Because if you critically look at some of the things that they would say, they want freedom for everyone. So do conservatives. We really want freedom for everyone, including ourselves. I don't believe what you believe, but guess what? I'll fight and die for your right to have the things that you have. But you're not going to dictate to me in school that I've got to teach my kid in 5th grade about homosexuality. No, I've decided that's not what I'm going to do, and you're not going to do it, and I'm willing to fight you for that. But you have a right to live that life. You have a right for this. If you believe a certain way about economic ideas with taxes and whatnot, we can debate that, and that can win through the court systems. But when it comes to ideologies, I want to have a reason that I believe what I believe, and I want to be willing to fight for those if I have to.
100%. I mean, right now you have all these children in school wearing masks, and we really didn't even have a conversation. It was just implemented. You have a lot of things that are taking place where we didn't even have the normal due process that we would go through as a country, where we would say, let's match this versus our ideology. Let's bring everybody together. Let's speak on these difficult topics, and let's make sure we're making good decisions. We all just kind of know the direction that things are heading is not sustainable. Everybody feels that. We all know, no matter which side you're on, you understand that it's not sustainable to be in the state of chaos that we are in a lot of these points. And, it's really coming to a culmination in the next few weeks. I mean, this feels like one of the biggest power struggles in our lifetime, hands down. Like I said, you're a generation ahead of me, but do you remember something being at this hostile of a state where, I mean, there's a massive power struggle. And the bad thing about that is it's smashing people on the lower level too. It is ripping families apart. It is tearing communities apart. And we need to be more like sitting down together and having the challenging dialogues, because the people at the top are not going to. You tend to see the extremists, and the media naturally just gives power to the extremists. It sells stories. It makes people pay attention. Our fear receptors are on full alert. You know, we need to get back to community, what is right from wrong. Like, we know these things when we sit down in small groups, you know, and even if we end up having different viewpoints at the end, it's easier to solve complex situations when you take so much of the chaos out and you start saying, like, what is right? How would I want to raise my family? Where would I want my, you know, son or daughter to grow up? What ideologies do I support? And why am I for those things? One of the things that you're saying that I believe anyone, even the furthest leftist or the furthest right, should be able to support is the idea that, like, you know what you believe and why you believe it. You weren't just conditioned to a thought process that you never considered. Like, why do I think that? Why does that make sense? Why am I willing to fight for these things? So, I mean, we're at a difficult point because, I mean, my girlfriend came to me recently and was telling me, yeah, Braden has to wear a mask every day when he goes to school and I'm thinking, like, that wasn't more of a debate. That wasn't a conversation. We didn't have to sit down and look at the science and the data. Isn't that what should drive all of our actions? Not just the opinion of one person? I mean, the Supreme Court just ruled 7-0 to saying that as of May 1st, all of the executive orders have been thrown out. And they were 4-3 in order of overturning the 1945 ruling that gave her the power. We all know who I'm referring to. The power that she ran off into the sunset with. We didn't even have to have a conversation for society-altering things like masks. I mean, I understand a business. You and I just spoke earlier. Man, I go to Bigby every day. If they said to me, James, if you come in here without a mask on, we're not going to serve you, I'd say, okay, no problem. I'll take my business somewhere else. No problem, because I believe in your rights. I run a business. Not a single person wears a mask in this building. We have hundreds of people sweat on each other, breathe on each other, interact, and we trust in immune systems. We trust in interacting with the world around us. We trust in science.
Vitamin C and exercise.
We trust in things that have been established throughout human history. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? But, you know, and I will fight for anyone to have those rights. If you want to wear a mask out in public, I'll support your right to do so. But then why is it you believe that you can tell me that I don't have the right to not wear a mask? I do take care of myself. I do exercise. I am on top of my things. So should I be punished because other people are not? We're not even having conversations anymore. It's almost like there's a power that be that's flat out saying this is what's going to take place and you're going to comply. And that is a dangerous avenue, a tipping point, a slippery slope that we don't really want to go down, because that is once you can push people to blind compliance, which I believe you can only do through fear. You have to beat the hell out of them with fear, and to the point where they're so broken down that they just say, like, please tell us what will save us from this fear. And then you can have the sheep just walk off the cliff, right? I mean, you just have to beat people down, because otherwise, if you have strong figures, they don't back down. They speak up when you try to push them around. It's the reason that a gentleman like you or a gentleman like me, we don't get bullied. It can't happen. It's not that we can't get beat up. There's people out there that'll beat my ass. There's people out there that beat your ass. But you can't bully us, because we won't just back down. But nowadays, it's like the entire conversation is shifting, and it doesn't even matter. You and I could sit down and prove every bit of the medical data that we believe in, why wearing a mask all day and not breathing in fresh air and exhaling CO2 like we've done throughout human history. We could prove beyond any reasonable doubt that this is the science, and yet changes are still being enacted. That's an incredible thing.
Yeah, it is.
And it's coming to a culmination because after November 3rd, if the current administration wins, we're going to go one direction as a country. I mean, we're nominating Supreme Court justices now. I mean, there are some massive pieces moving. If the other party wins, we are going a completely different direction as this country.
It's never been more clear.
100%. And people need to sit down and they need to reflect on their lives. They need to reflect on their families, their values, everything that they hold dear to their heart and what makes this country great. And they need to decide, what future am I laying for my family by either taking no action, taking action, being silent, or being outspoken?
Well, yeah. You know what? Here's what you said. And the most clear thing with this that people need to understand is this. If just use the mask because it's the simplest thing, because it's the most hot topic issue. If I'm just going to, I'll just say it straight. If you vote for a Democrat right now, you're going to have your life dictated to you. Take the mask. They'll mandate for however long. Because one of my arguments is, are you going to wear the mask the rest of your life? What are you going to do? I'll share a conversation with you in a second with a lady I had at Secretary of State just the other day, because I didn't wear a mask in there either. If you vote for a conservative, you still are going to be able to wear your mask. You have the choice to wear your mask. You can wear the mask the rest of your life. If you want to look like somebody from China that wears a mask everywhere you go, then wear a mask. You can still do all of the things that you want to do. If you think that voting for a conservative is going to keep you from being able to do the things you're going to do, it's not going to. That's not the world we live in anymore. It used to be homosexuality was the thing. Now it's our health, and you're going to be able to do the things that you want to do if you vote for a conservative. If you vote for a liberal, you are going to have to do what is dictated to you. Your taxes are going to be raised. Your government's going to be bigger. There's going to be more bureaucracy in our individual lives. So the only thing that changes if Trump is reelected is that we'll have the freedoms to do the things that we want. We'll continue to be a free country that now, despite the last 8 years prior to Trump's 4, that doesn't get trampled on by other countries and taken advantage of financially for personal financial gains of the politicians. So life doesn't have to change, and the world's not going to fall apart because of that. Business is better. Anybody that's in business will tell you, and I would challenge anyone to prove me wrong, under Republican administrations, business throughout the country is better. It just is. That's not an opinion. It is better. So that being said, I think right now what I hate is being able to look at what's happening and see why, but you can't regress. You can't go back and change. If this had happened like this 20 years ago, hell, 10 years ago, but let's just say 20 years ago, everyone would not be wearing masks. They would not be dictated to. It's the inundation of information in our news, TV, the internet, everything else that just bombards you with information. People are walking around scared to death. I told you, I was in Colorado, and can I tell this story? I was in Colorado. I don't like fast food. It doesn't sit well with me, and I don't like to be fat, so I don't eat it. But we're in Colorado, and we needed something to eat quick. We had to get ice going back to the mountains. So there was a McDonald's there. I walk into McDonald's, and not wearing a mask, and seemed like everybody else did, like around here. And I had a guy walk up to me, and he said, "Hey guys, I'm a patriot too. I was in Vietnam." He was definitely too young to have been in Vietnam, so he started off with a lie. He was a tall guy and relatively fit for an older guy. He's probably 60. And he said to me, "But there are doctors on the front line that have," and he comes up to me and said, "There are doctors on the front line that are proving this disease is killing people, blah, blah, blah." And he went on and just started. I was like, "Listen, dude, I'm not going to use the exact language I used in talking to this guy, because I said that, first off, it's not a disease, it's a virus." And he said, "It's an effing disease." So that didn't set well with me. I won't tell you the whole story, but needless to say, he left in his Prius, probably crying, his butterfly tears, his snowflake tears. And as he flipped us off, when he drove past leaving, like most courageous guys do. But that resonated with me, because you have convinced a 60-year-old man, who I can't say makes good decisions because he was driving a Prius, but you've convinced a somewhat intelligent human being that it's a disease. We're coming out with a vaccination for this thing, apparently, which, if you wonder where I'm at, I won't take, because I'm not injecting myself with aborted fetal tissue and chemicals that no human being should ever put in their body. I won't take it. But you don't have vaccines for diseases. You just don't. Those are called cures, and we don't have one for that. If that's the case, then let's have a vaccine for cancer and everything else that's wrecking us. There aren't. But you've convinced people so much so that an intelligent human being feels like this is a disease and it's running rampant through our country. Contrary to all legitimate data that's out there, you've got people scared to death. And like you said, fear is people buy cars because they sat there in fear of the salesperson. People make horrible decisions out of fear. They just do, and they've done that now. And now it's become part of just their psyche. They believe that when they see someone without a mask, oh my gosh, I'm going to die because of this person. You've got people so scared to death, riddled with fear, that they're willing to kick somebody out of a store, or kick somebody out of any business around here because you don't have a mask on. You've got store owners fearful that they're going to lose their license to do whatever they're doing. I mean, you've got barbers that can't cut hair because of it. My gosh,
and psychologists have known forever, which means governments know and powerful people know that, we're driven by our emotional system. It's called your limbic system. If you can affect people on a emotional level, you can drive action. So a major power play would be if you just beat the living hell out of people with fear, and then you told them the answer to these fears is to go do this or follow that or believe this or buy into that.
Yep.
It's honestly basic human psychology, and the amount of people left that really critically think is just, they don't want to. It's easier to be entertained. It is not easy to have to sort through the madness that's thrown at you and the incredible amount of stimulus that we encounter every single day. Sort through all that, put it aside, go sit in a quiet room and start going through why I believe what I believe. Where did I get that information? What sources are behind that? Who have I actually spoken to that is reputable, that verifies any of this? Right. Because if I turned off my news, this pandemic didn't even exist.
Right.
People get sick during flu season. It's a true story. Mm-hmm. And if we tested for asymptomatic cases of anything, imagine if we just sought out to test every single person that has influenza. It doesn't matter if you have symptoms. Not like in the past, hey, if you have to go to the hospital, then yeah, we'll record that.
Right.
No, we're going to just find it. We'd have millions of cases of influenza. You could create mass panic, but you wouldn't do that because there's no logic to it. It's just dumb.
Right.
It makes no sense. But here we are. So, how could you not, without going into a conspiracy theory, how could you not look into the idea that, why wouldn't it just be a manufactured thing to create human emotion, to drive action, and then just pull them towards the direction that you want? You know, it's madness the way that we're going through this now. And without families sitting down, or close communities sitting down and really analyzing, what is taking place in the world? What does our future look like? What is the end result of these conversations not being handled correctly? It's a dangerous thing ahead. You know what I mean? Your daughter was gone for a short period and came back with some wild ideology with no real. Think about a lifetime of being raised in one area under one ideology. She's gone for this super short period. She didn't experience socialism. She didn't travel to a part of the world and get the viewpoints of people that live under that regime to say, oh my God, this is the worst thing ever. We would kill to be in the United States of America. We would love to be in the country that you're in. We would love to have a free market where if you work hard, you can excel. And she didn't experience any of that, but she came back already brainwashed with a new ideology. We have some interesting times ahead, my friend.
Sure we do. You get kids out that come from home that want to become their own person, and that is a huge demographic. People that are every year that are going away to college, and they want to become their own person, their own ideas. Some of it may be a revolt against how they grew up, even if it was a healthy revolt. Hell, everybody at some point decides I'm going to be my own man. My dad was my best friend my whole life, but at some point I'm going to do things this way instead of the way, and then I have to come back to, damn, he was right. So you get that, and then you don't get that family unit that's willing to sit down and have real conversations instead of just going, well, that's bullcrap, Bernie Sanders, blah, blah, blah. You're willing to sit down and not even talk about Bernie Sanders. Let's just talk foundationally about what you believe. And I believe that's why that worked. And then when they begin to live real life and participate in society, a lot of the people that are thinking the way these guys are thinking aren't participating in society. How many people in there are actually contributing to society in any way, shape, or form? With a job or with raising children? Most of them are morons. Just call it what it is. Everybody you see interviewed or anybody you see arrested, you can look at them. You can tell that they are morons. I'm not saying that everybody that supports BLM is a moron, but if you do your homework, you won't, because if I know you and you support BLM, you haven't done your homework to watch what's happening. You haven't done your homework to know who they're funded by. It's on their website. You can literally read the gosh darn website and see where that money goes. That's all you have to do. And here's what they're doing. Here's the part I hate. Do I believe in human rights for everyone? You're damn right I do. If I'm walking down this road and I see somebody assaulting a black man because he's black, dude, it's on, bro. I mean, I will fight and die for you. But if you think that, and here's what they're doing, they're taking advantage of that idea that I want to see these changes and I'm going to be a part of that because that's the only place I can see some of these changes happening, then of course they're going to be a part of that. Now you've got innocent people tied up in this idea and they're a part of something that is historically will be viewed as terroristic within our country. It's not going to be viewed as some revolution that changed the world. It's not going to be looked at like Martin Luther King. It's going to be looked at like you guys should have been shot because you were hurting people and burning businesses and destroying lives. And when you say you burned a business, I don't think people look at some of the stuff that's happened and recognize the long-term impacts that makes on an individual and a family and potentially even generations to come. You look at Portland to see what's happened there. The ideas and the mindsets that are going to come out of that by the youth that witnessed this and were a part of this and were told that this is good, what are they going to be 20 years from now when they don't like something that happened? How are they going to respond to that? It is.
I think you hit a bullseye with something. You tap into something that is good in someone's heart on an emotional level, like the idea that all human beings on earth deserve certain rights. But then you take that ideology and you twist it. Like we could start a company today called the Department of Truth, right? And not tell a single thing of truth, not speak a single word of truth, and do nothing but deception and lies and corruption. They're just words. So you're tapping into the spirit of someone being like, no, absolutely, everybody is important, and you know what? This individual group of people needs me right now. I need to step up to the plate, but without understanding the organization or what the ideology really is within that. I don't know what you call it, a group or company or clique or cult or whatever word you would classify it as. So then it's like you're just taking people that really probably do have good love in their hearts and stuff and want the world to be better, but then they're like puppets on a string for something big. I went to the BLM thing and I saw some friends and I walked around and I interviewed some people and I talked and I said, I'm just trying to understand, like, okay, what is Black Lives Matter as a group? And I actually had a little bit of a confrontation with a friend of mine who was like, you need to stand here on the street with your fist up. And I was going, no, I'm not going to do that. And we got in a little bit of a heated exchange. He said, if you're here to support this, you would do that. And I go, listen, I know this much.
That's fascism.
About Black Lives Matter. I know this much about it. I know nothing. The organization could be horrifically corrupt. That it could have been my grandfather and grandmother beat to death or not to death. I watched a store owner, elderly man and woman get beaten and pummeled and had their store looted. What if that's my grandfather? And then all of a sudden you're saying, hey, support this organization. Absolutely not. Do I support the ideology that Black Lives Matter? 1,000%. Like you said initially, if I ever see an act of racism, I'm going to call that out because it's not good for the human race.
Right.
But that doesn't tie into an organization. But how many people can understand this type of complexity in thinking to say, like, wait a second, just because an organization has this name doesn't mean at all that I should support what this organization does. Yeah. Where does their money go? Are they going in and rebuilding the communities of the people that are living in the worst conditions in the United States of America? Inner cities and Democrat-ran places that people live in horrific conditions. Black Lives Matter is generating hundreds of millions of dollars. Are they going in? We're going to rebuild the communities from the ground up and give these people the quality of life that they deserve because that's what I in my heart would want them to do?
No, they're not.
So.
But then you become labeled. I don't want to interrupt you, but I have to say that because here's what people will take. If people listen to this interview with me, they would come out of here and go, well, Kelley's a homophobe, anti-equality racist. I'm the furthest thing from any of those things. Like I said, I would fight and die for any of those demographics at all. I don't have a bone in my body that because someone is a black man that would say, well, I discredit him immediately, or I don't think he should have every right. I'm talking literally about Black Lives Matter as an organization. Because do I think Black Lives Matter? Yes. Do I believe that the data supports a lot of the stuff that they have out there? Absolutely not. I believe it's erroneous and bullshit and deceptive. Do I think there are changes that could happen in the world? Yes, 110%. But the problem is that now you fall into one of two camps. You can't be a critical thinker in the middle that is like, all right, yeah, there are some things that need to change. You're either for this or you're from the left mentality, dead set against it. Like the guy who told you need to lift your hand up and raise your hand. The people that you see in these videos going into these restaurants and knocking people's food off their table and saying that they have to put their hand up in the air and say this if you believe this. That is that Antifa is supposed to be anti-fascism. That is the most fascist organization that's ever been created in the history of our freaking country, because violently they are, which, my God, please let that happen somewhere where someone's going to have a set of balls and stand up to that stuff. Why does that never? My wife says that stuff will never happen in front of you. I'm like, you're right. God doesn't want that to happen, because when is one of those dudes ever, one man, going to stand up and start knocking people out? And maybe he gets hurt, but at least he did something when a woman's getting dragged by her hair across the road by somebody. When is that ever going to happen? But nevertheless, that is fascism. You have to believe this, or there are political, or in this case, unfortunately, violent circumstances that will bestow upon you if you don't believe what we believe. That is garbage. But as a whole, as a country, if you don't support or believe these things, then they put you in a camp of you don't care about people. People could walk away from this interview, a diehard political liberal could walk away from this interview and say those things about me. They couldn't be further from the truth. I care about people. My business is successful because I care about people. My family has done well for themselves, and I don't mean financial. I just mean that I've raised good young men, and I've raised a great woman because I care about them and I care about people. You can't discount what I believe because I don't support those organizations. Liberal used to, mean to some people that, again, you were for everyone. I am for everyone. Are there things that I don't think that ever should be dictated to me? You have the freedom in this country not to live the way I think you should live. You do. Those hot topic issues always have been, very controversial, like homosexuality. Again, for me, I believe, because of what the Bible says, that's a sin. Would I ever have someone discriminate against you because you are a homosexual? Absolutely not. Do I want to do jujitsu with you? No, I'm not. There's certain things I'm not going to do because of the way I am. But I support you, and as a human being, I love you, and I would do for you like I would do for others. I don't want you treated poorly because of what you believe. But by God, on the other side of that, because I believe what I believe because of what the Bible tells me, you can't discriminate against me because I believe that. That's what real freedom is. You do you, I'll do me. And as a society, we can't dictate that I believe what you believe. We can't make it legal that says I believe what you believe. There are laws out. There are enough laws on. Let's take guns, for instance. Everybody that knows me knows I love guns. There are enough laws on the book right now that if you commit a felony or commit a crime with a gun, that you can go to prison the rest of your life 10 times over. We don't need new laws on the books. You can look at data that would show you that more crimes are committed with illegal guns or there are more people that protect themselves with a gun than crimes are committed with guns. There's so much data that's out there, but you're made in society now and in the news to look like you're some kind of right-wing nut job because you believe a certain thing. I believe in the freedoms in this country. People don't need to be policed by our government. Our government, when founded, was founded to keep us safe from threats abroad. They weren't created to create bureaucratic organizations. That they weren't created to. The church was in place to take care of poverty. Us dictating and having welfare programs. I mean, that is a form of socialism because you're taking and giving, and you're mandating what happens from that with that. Our government was not created for any of those things. We have slid so far into this place that we think the government takes care of all of the stuff, that we allow them to dictate the things that you and I are sitting here griping about right now with masks and business closures. Who the hell is the government to get to dictate all of that? But we are so far gone. I don't remember who said it, but someone, I hate when I have a quote and I can't say who it was, but someone said that every 100 years or 200 years that a government needs to be overthrown and rebuilt. We're at the place now, I remember as a kid in the 80s, people talking about they were doing financial inspections through the Pentagon, and there was $300 screwdrivers that were being bought. When you start seeing the level of corruption that we see over the last 50 to 60 years in our country, man, we're at a place that I don't know that it's, and I'm not a woe is me guy, but I just don't know if it's recoverable as a country based on what we've set in place. I mean, we have a president of a country. This is going to sound weird to some people. We've outgrown, that's not democracy. We've outgrown our system altogether, where you got one guy that sits at the throne of all of this stuff. I mean, we kicked the people out of the country that had somebody sitting on a throne a long time ago. And now we have this, instead of the vote that you talked about with the school system wearing masks, which, by the way, my kid doesn't. I had him do digital school because he's not breathing his own exhaust fumes all day long. My wife has to as a teacher, unfortunately, and it sucks. But when we don't have a vote for those issues that are that impact our lives that much, we just let these dudes, these congressmen that we let, and senators that, oh man, get me started on that. I'll just get so mad. When we got 80-some-year-old congressmen and senators that have been sitting on there with their teeth falling out of their head for the last 10 years, and they're multi-millionaires and weren't when they went in, and they're dictating all these things for us. They're not listening to their constituents. You got people like Nancy Pelosi, whose own town that she's responsible is falling apart with homelessness and poverty and murders, and you've got these guys that they're dictating how we live our lives because we continue as a society like idiots to keep putting them in office. That system is jacked up to me.
100%, man. I mean, it's truly a revolutionary time to be alive. If you would have tried to implement the things that are taking place, like if you could just, from right now, you could pull out what today was going to look like and you try to drop it in place 30 years ago, people would have laughed in your face.
Oh, there'd be muskets.
They would have said, are you kidding me?
Cracking off left and right.
No one would have gone for it, but yet somehow we've pushed people farther away and farther away from critical thinking and information, and data should back things, and conversation should come first, never just rule implementation. And there's censorship coming back stronger than it's been in a long period of time. Once you have to start censoring information, that's a dangerous road as well.
Are you talking about the New York Times article that the social media is?
That could be one, or there's several.
Yeah.
There's so many where, I mean, when I put out my May 1st decision that I had to open up this building, and I said, hey, I'm laying out every opinion and all the information that I've compiled based on all of these sources. I want you to judge me fairly. That was taken down. That was censored. And I was like, we are approaching a dangerous game here where it doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what you have to say. It doesn't matter what research you've done or how well formulated your opinion is. Shut up and do as you're told. That's just not the American spirit, my man.
Here's what's, in my opinion, what's happened is that social media companies have a monopoly on that, and now we're at the point. I don't like what is it? I don't like what's it called when I should know this. I'm a real estate agent. When you have land, but the government takes it over, needs it for the development.
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain. I hate the idea of that, but I understand it. As a society, we are a society, and we need to do certain things. I don't like the idea of government stepping into a private business, but at this point in time, they have such a monopoly on our ability to share across the board. You can't do business in this day and age without Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of these things. And now they are censoring these, and they're doing it under the guise of privately owned businesses. Well, you have a monopoly on the market, and the federal government can step in on that.
It's probably the most powerful tool in the world, too. You control the information that the world receives. You can literally filter information in any fashion you want. They've proven forever that suggestive thinking and presenting things in a certain way and controlled opposition literally reformulates the way that people think. Imagine when you now have this tool where everyone in the world taps into further information, and you can choose what information is displayed or how you present it. We just fact check it. We have someone sitting in an office that says, fact check. As of this day and time, this is what it is. Have a nice day. And there's no consequences for being wrong.
Right.
It's just again, how many things are we talking about here that is just, where did this come from? How did we get here as a society?
And why is no one doing anything about it? That's the part that pisses me off. Now they're calling these guys back in. I just saw again where they're calling, these social media guys back in to sit in front of Congress again. They've done it before. I can set out and not even be immersed in this world and look and see where these guys are censoring. I mean, it is a definitive infringement on our First Amendment rights, but nothing happens. Nothing happens. I see things happening right now. I'm like, how in the world? If you take the government down to like my house, if my house operated the way our federal government operates and allowed some of the things to happen, dude, it would implode. And we are imploding, it seems like right now. There's a part of me, dude, that just wants to, I talked about being in the mountains, just move to the mountains in a cabin and just Swiss Family Robinson, man. That dude, the dad had it right in that. I know it was only a movie, but just to be away from all of it, and life goes on, and Sometimes if I sit around thinking about it and think, are we going to change things? Are things going to change? It makes me further digress from wanting to be a bigger part of it, because I feel like at this point in time, things are so far out of control as far as what we do. Even if Trump wins the election, I do not want to spend the next 4 years listening to all the bullcrap from the left and all the vitriol that comes from them. And I'm not saying that the right's not capable of that same stuff. I mean, couldn't stand Obama, but I would never, ever in a million years think about being the way the left has been with Trump. Never. I mean, I respect the office. I think that guy was a horrible human being, and I don't believe his policies were good for our country. And a matter of fact, I think they were just the opposite. I think they were not good for our country. And if anybody ever wants to talk details on that, I can do that. I'm not just saying that because I didn't like him as a person, because he seemed like a nice guy. He spoke well. But I didn't like those things. But it feels like right now that we don't have real representation anymore, or the grounds to stand on to do, I don't have the legitimate data with like the Hillary Clinton stuff. But when I see things that seem to go unpunished and continue to carry on and just get worse and nothing happens, it's almost like you lose faith in your representation, even if it's a conservative reputation. They're politicians. They don't go in rich, they come out rich. Lobbyists control a lot of what happens. Big business controls a lot of what happens. And I don't trust that our best interest is at heart, because they're so separated from the normal dudes, even successful in my field, compared to the life these guys live. They're so far. I mean, you've got somebody like Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders that, Bernie will say straight up socialism. The rest of these clowns, AOC and the rest of them, don't always say the word socialism, but that's what they support. But they're so far removed from it, it doesn't impact them. They have 6 homes. They're multi-millionaires. They're not impacted by that. I just feel like even on the right that those politicians are so wealthy, and it's almost like a little monopoly board that they're playing on. They're so far removed from everyday life. It's like listening to Hollywood talk about stuff. It's like, dude, you guys, you're not one of us. You don't get it. You're so far removed that your reality becomes whatever you make it. And now these guys are in charge of helping us rule our society.
You hit on a really strong point that bothers me a lot. It just seems like the hammer never falls. I feel like there's a million accusations. Everybody knows that things are wrong across the board. You don't have to dig at all to find scandals, corruption, and horrific things, but just nothing seems to ever happen.
Never. Not since Nixon.
Exactly. So when you're looking at these things, how can you have faith in anything when it just seems like there's no consequence? If someone got completely smashed by being corrupt and doing bad things, it would reinvigorate the idea that, like, you know what? There is actually consequence, and there is a direction that we know this isn't right. We're not going to continue to go to that direction, and here's the hammer coming down on this person that tried to do these things.
Yeah.
We're in a strange point, man. So I just want to say maybe we'll even have to do a follow-up after the election and just talk about life and, bringing people back on their feet and re-empowering people. You touched on something earlier that I wanted to make sure I commented on, like the idea of the systemic racism and a lot of things. Every time I hear so many of these things, all I hear is words that are disempowering people. You are literally reaching into people's lives and you are telling them that, hey, the reason that you're not at your potential and the reason your life is not great is because of these things. They're above your hands. Sorry, you should hate your country and thank you very much. It's the opposite is true. Any circumstance, although it may be terrible, you might have a rough start, you might be born in a crack house in Detroit. Some of the most powerful people that I listen to, Les Brown, Eric Thomas, these people have stories of coming from the bottom of the bottom to being world-renowned, amazing human beings. I thought systemic racism was shutting all the opportunities down, and that you are what you make of yourself. And are there things, are there racist people still in the country? Absolutely. Am I against those people? Absolutely. But is life what you make of it? Yes. And when you start buying into the ideology of someone telling you, the reason you're not successful is because of these people. This white man or this white woman or this corporation, they're the enemies, and they're the reason that your life is not good and the reason that you're not accomplishing your dreams. You're just ripping your own power out. I actually just feel pity for those people. I go, man, if you would just get around some good human beings and get some mentors and make sure that your character is right and your work ethic is right, you can conquer in this world. And then you know what you can do by conquering? You can reach down and lift people up that came from that same background, and you can show them that, listen, don't buy into that shit. The media might be telling you all these things, but don't buy into that. Make the life that you desire. Create it. And you can do it here. This country, you have a much better opportunity of doing it than many places around the world. Like I said, if you think America sucks, you need to travel. You will open your eyes to the way. Rural China hit me the hardest. I've been in China 4 times, and rural China, when we saw the way that the children lived and just the society, and over there, if you're against anything, you'll just disappear. And if you made a big enough impact, your family will disappear. Like, you don't get to have a say in anything at all, kind of like the way it's almost, to me, feels like a light version of that now. We're starting to just not get a say in things. Doesn't matter what you think, doesn't matter what the data says. This is what we're doing.
Well, they demonize you for that. What you just said, because we could sit here and talk about systemic racism, we'll be demonized for that. I like what you said, because I had a conversation with my family, and I had to talk about why I think the way I think about certain things, because I didn't want my family even thinking, Dad's just being racist. I loathe what is being done to our black communities, because what you said, robbing them of the idea that you're in control of what happens to you, unless in that community, let me back up. Charles Barkley said something. He always pisses people off, and sometimes I like what he says and sometimes I don't. But he says the unfortunate thing in our black communities right now is that what we think that they want to be is not what they want to be. Young men in those communities, because of how they're raised, they aspire to that thug mentality. And he said, I hate seeing it. It sucks, but it's got to change. Until in that community, you begin to have this idea that you can have more than what's in here, and the community starts to lift you up. People will say, yeah, but the school systems suck. The school systems are supported by the money that comes in through taxes from the properties that are around there, homes that are around there. Well, people don't want to live there because it's dangerous, so there's not that money to support those schools, right? Well, there's not businesses here, and people need a place to work. Businesses aren't going to be there because look what happens to businesses in those communities. That broken window mentality, you let them break a window. Kids, as a kid, you let them break a window. The next thing they do is this, the gateway idea. But in those communities, unless there's this idea that I want more, and this is what pisses me off, because that's how I could sound like a racist if I just said that. Well, you're going to have to want more. If we keep telling our black communities, our minority communities as a whole, that you can't because of these things, and it's all this sovereign white ideas that we're the reason for it, then they're never going to, our minority communities are never going to aspire for more than that. You're not going to have moms telling their kids that they can be more, because those stories that you talked about, where the mom of those kids, probably someone in their life told them that they could be more and you could have more and you could strive for more. Until you start seeing more of that, where you're not growing up thinking that the police are just going to shoot you and they hate you, and that schools, you can never succeed in schools, and all the teachers suck, and businesses aren't around here, so what are you going to do? Until there's this idea that you can be more and want more, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do that fixes that. Would I do anything? Yeah, but who am I to go into that community as like this, this great white hope? I'm going to go in there and fix it. I'm not going to do that. You're going to have to want more for yourself, and you're going to have to believe that it's out there. But if you think that systemic racism, define systemic racism. That means that the system is rigged against you. If anything, the system is in your favor. People hate this because that's racist mentality. No, affirmative action happened. That is racist. That's racist as hell. You can say whatever you want, but it exists, and I understood why it exists. But these opportunities exist for you as a minority in this country, whether you're black, Hispanic, it doesn't matter what it is. They exist for you in this country. My gosh, when people dismiss the idea that you say we had a black president, that how can our system be rigged against you if you have a black president? That can't be dismissed. The president, the most powerful person in our country, was a black man. It's still in question where he came from, but whatever. We won't get into that because I don't know what I believe. But if the opportunity exists for you there's nothing in the system that would rig against you. You will never control the idea that a person could be racist. I've seen more racism from our black communities than I have our white communities during this BLM stuff. Ever. Do I think that all black people are racist because of that? Hell no, I don't believe that. I believe that there are outliers everywhere, black, white, it doesn't matter what color, that are willing to take advantage of an opportunity like these riots to hurt people and to steal and do all the dumb shit that they do. But does that mean that I think all black people are like that? Hell no, I don't believe that at all. I don't, and I'm not going to name my black friends to prove that I don't feel that way, because I hate when people do that. But if you continue to make people think that they can't be more than the circumstances that they come from, I'll point you to my dad, who grew up in Norwood, Ohio, one of the only white kids around, and literally had to learn. My dad was so tough because he had to fight to live because of where he grew up and the circumstances he grew up in. And he retired from Bell Telephone. He started his own business. He was, relatively successful as far as middle class goes, and raised a family and pulled himself away from all of that, until in those communities they're led to believe that they can be more, and that comes from inside. It can't just be an outside influence. Then that's not going to change. And I believe that this idea breaks my heart more for them than when I stand up against the idea of systemic racism. It's not because I don't want to be considered a racist because I'm a white guy, because I don't care what you think of me, because I'm not that. It's because what you're doing systemically is keeping them where they are, and I freaking hate that. And that's why I hate when people talk about, well, Joe Biden's going to do something. Joe Biden did nothing. The Democratic Party did nothing for our minority community. He didn't do it for 47 years. Donald Trump, you think what you think about him. Is he a foul-mouthed knucklehead? Yeah, sure he is. But what did he do for the things that Kamala Harris did just the opposite for? Getting people out of prison that had a weed conviction or sold some weed or something, and they're in there for 50 years. Those are the kind of changes that need to actually happen, but we keep people from thinking that you can be more and that changes can happen because Donald Trump's a bad guy and white people are all racist. That doesn't exist in this world, that overt racism at that level. You can go into some small town community and see some doucher racist because his grandpa was, but you're always going to see that. If I walk in downtown Detroit, I'll get killed for being white on some streets, But does that mean that all black people are racist jerks? No, it doesn't mean that. There's outliers everywhere, and you got to move past that and be bigger than that.
Yeah, man. And like I said, this year has really stirred the pot. You have some crazy ideologies floating around. We need to get back to the truth of things. We need to come together as people now more than ever. And we need to come back together on virtues and ideas. Like I had one interview that I didn't even publish because I had an interview with a friend of mine's wife when this all was kind of starting, and I like her and I like him a lot, and I didn't even publish this because she was like pushing the ideology that all cops are bastards. Remember that CAB? And I'm like, as much as you would hate racism, you are stereotyping all police as bastards when you don't know the same exact thing that you demonize and say is the worst thing that we need to. You are the epitome. I could not define a more clear example of someone stereotyping people. And here you are saying all cops are bastards. I saw a meme that she had posted 2 days before the interview, and I was like, this interview is not going to go good. She posted a meme that said, I'm not uncomfortable around my LGBTQ, black, Mexican. It listed all these people. I'm not uncomfortable around those people. I'm terrified around straight white men. And I go, you are stereotyping and being racist, although, I mean, you're white, so but you're being racist, and on top of that, you are stereotyping worse than any conservative that I know. Can you not understand that? And somehow there's like, they don't see the reflection of what is right in front of their face. I didn't even post the interview because I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to do this to that woman, because I hope that 5 years from now she looks back and she goes, I can't believe I was pushing the idea that all cops are bastards, and yet I'm against stereotyping. I can't believe that I was saying I'm comfortable around all these groups, but straight white men scare me. It was so unbelievable to my brain that I was just like, I can't even post this. I just have to delete it. Because when I watched it through, I was like, this is something that will haunt her, in my opinion, when she finally takes a step back out of her emotions. She held up a book that was white fragility and was like, everybody in the country needs to read this. Listen, this is going to come off maybe to offend people, but like, I don't have guilt for being white or being born to a certain family or being raised in a certain community. Why would I have guilt? If I am not racist and I have not done things to harm other people and I haven't done things out of stereotyping a group of human beings or anything like that, how can I possibly carry guilt for it? That is the most idiotic theory that I've ever heard in my entire life. Yeah. I just can't even wrap my brain around it.
Well, how many times have you literally witnessed overt racism? I'm 47 years old. I grew up in Kentucky, where people are like, oh, yeah, hillbillies down there, racist. How many times have you ever experienced in a professional setting or anything overt racism? Never. Never have I ever heard somebody yell say the N word. Yeah, but guess what? I've been called derogatory white terms when I was going to bars in Clifton when I was young, way more than I have ever heard someone say that to someone. Do I think all black people are racist because of that? No, we keep racism alive because we need a thing. People need this outlet, and they need to be victims. I hate a victim mentality more than anything, and people need that and cling to it.
And honestly, one thing that might be taking place is the media or certain things may be boosting outlier theories to the fullest. They might be giving so much power to these outlier theories. And let's be honest, maybe a lot of people that would classify themselves on the left might say, man, I don't buy into any of that shit. I don't support any of that garbage. It's all nonsense. But of course, the voices that are being propelled to the highest levels are the most extreme. The ones where, ACAB, when I first heard of it, I was like, that's a thing? There are people that believe the ideology that every police officers come in all colors, shapes, sizes, ages, backgrounds, beliefs, statuses, everything. But you're going to stereotype all of them as bastards?
Right.
That is the dumbest theory I've ever heard in my life. And I've heard some dumb theories. So, man, Kelley, 2 hours of dialogue, and I feel like we could go another 3 if we didn't stop it here. This is going to be part 1, but I guarantee for the people that listen to this and enjoy the fact that we are 2 men sitting down discussing things raw, real, from the heart, without bullshitting people, without putting, a certain spin on things so that it sounds good to you. No, this is the energy we need going into 2021. This year was a good reset button. This allowed us to all take a step back, reflect on our lives, reflect on our communities, reflect on the future, and we need to come together now as people of every color, of every creed, of every ideology out there. And we need to find middle grounds. We need to find ways where at the end of the day, we're not going to agree on everything. And that is okay. It is okay for me to respect you as a human being and not believe in some of the things that you believe in. And you know what? That's what freedom is. I'm supposed to be able to say, I'm going to stay on this side of the line on this issue, and you're going to stay on that side. But I respect you as a man, and as long as you don't infringe upon my rights in this country to exist, and I don't infringe upon yours, we should have mutual respect. And there's a certain, like I said, I have a sanctuary here that I know people that come in this building that are definitely liberal, and I know people that come in this building that are definitely conservative. I know people that come in here that are very religious, non-religious, rich, poor. But in this building, for at least a small moment in time, they shake each other's hands, they treat each other with nothing but respect, and if it can be done on this platform, it can be done on a large platform. Right on. So, man, I enjoyed this. This is an unreal podcast. Like I said, 2 hours. It was effortless, and we will do a part 2. So
right on, man.
Just anything else you want to capture in this moment, any shout out, how do people, if they want to reach out to you for their real estate needs, they want to bring you a part of their community, how do they do so?
Yeah, I'll do that part first. If you're looking to buy or sell a house, man, just give me a call, 517-915-8778. It's Kelley Runion Real Estate Group. You can look it up on Facebook. You just get a real experience. You just won't get that salesman experience. So I don't want to push that hard. I will just say this. I was at the Secretary of State the other day, and I didn't wear a mask in there, and the lady behind the counter asked me if I wanted one, and I said no. And she proceeded to ask me real questions. And at the end of that conversation, as I walked out, there were other ladies behind the counter that I could see smirking and being smart alecks, and it's fine. I'm used to it. I thanked her for the conversation. I said, I just want to thank you for a civil conversation, because she didn't agree with me, but she asked why I believe what I believe, and I told her why I believed what I believe civilly. And it was awesome. I mean, it made me feel good that we could do that. She just disagreed with me completely, and it was okay, because we're 2 human beings that don't agree. Unless we're talking about someone being harmed, unless we're talking about pedophilia or something like that, there's no need for opposition that could lead to a physical confrontation individually or as a war in our country. There are things that would cause that in me, and there are things in the country that I think should create that if they continue. But when it comes down to disagreeing about political viewpoints or fiscal viewpoints or the way things used to be, we can have conversations about it, but know that you infringe on the freedoms of the people of this country, and people who believe that their freedoms are being infringed upon aren't just all non-thinking hillbilly idiots. They're people like me who are educated, people like you who believe what we believe, and it is because of our patriotic idea of what this country was founded upon that we'll fight for that. It's not about a damn mask. It's way bigger than that. It is about freedom, and a lot of blood was spilled for it in this country. And if it has to be again, then it will. I don't ever, ever, ever want that, ever. But by God, it's okay for someone to know that. Was it Helio that said every kid needs to learn to swim, ride a bike, and fight? Men at some point in time are going to have to be men and be courageous again and have the balls to stand up for the things that they believe in. And I don't ever want it to have to come to that. So I hope we can get to the point that we can be civil with one another and have these conversations and not stop being Americans.
Hearing your story from the Secretary of State, I'm going to tell one final thing on this podcast. I had, obviously, the reporters flocked to this building when I opened the doors on May 4th. I put out that video. YouTube censored it, took it down. Reporters flocked to this place because we're one of the first places to open up. And a gentleman came in, mask, gloves, and I said, "Hey, I'm James. Nice to meet you." And I could tell he was a reporter. And I reached out to shake his hand. He kind of pulled back. And so this gentleman, self-admittedly, is this very far left liberal, and him and I sat and discussed the entire thing for an hour. And at first, the you could feel, you can feel the confrontation and the energy.
Yeah, a little tension.
Tension. We're talking. He interviews me, and then he starts listening to me, and we sit down and we talk. And I'm going really deep into all the things that I've done. I've already spoken to multiple state representatives at that point. I've had doctors on the phone, ICU nurses. I have all the CDC information pulled up in front of me. I'm going through everything, and this guy starts changing a little bit. About a half an hour into it, he's looking at me, and he goes, "How much time have you put into this?" It starts shocking him because I'm pulling him everything right in front of me. He's bringing up numbers. I'm like, no, that's not correct. Let's grab a seat real quick. We're going through everything. I'm working him, and I was shocked that he was giving me the time of day. I was shocked that why is he not blowing me off and just saying, I gotta go. He sits down and we're going through everything. And then, he says, "How much time you've put in this?" I'm like, "Man, I watched every White House briefing in its entirety, start to finish. I've looked at the CDC website every day. I've called someone in my network every day." By the end of the conversation, no joke, I'm not going to say who the person is because I don't know if it'd get him in trouble with his company. Very successful reporter for a very big station here in Michigan. Took off his mask, shook my hand and says, "I tell you what, man, you did a great job here." He gave me his personal cell number. He says, "I might even come out and train with you guys sometime." We're talking, this conversation initially was the furthest ends. You could tell we were sitting on the opposite spectrum. Here's this asshole, rebellious, terrible person that doesn't care about human beings reopening his company. And here's this reporter trying to save the world with a beautiful story. We met in the middle. And at the end, like I said, he gave me his number. And then, like I said, I won't say who it is, but did a follow-up story when he heard Alicia was winning a world title. And the gentleman was human being first. He stepped out of his ideology. We sat down together as men. We went through everything. And by the end of it, I had so much respect for that man because of the fact that he came in on such a far spectrum. And in under an hour, he was like, "You know what? Off the record," gave me a handshake, took his mask off.
That's awesome.
Think about that, man.
Yeah,
So you know what that told me? There's hope. And that feeling is powerful because I guarantee you probably have the same sinister idea sometime where you're like, maybe there's not hope that we can fix this thing before the train goes too much off the rails. It gave me a little bit of hope. I said, you know what? It might just be back to that type of human connection, dialogue, bringing people together, showing that we do care about one another and trying to fix this country before, people that are at extremes run us into the ground.
Right on.
So, man, truly a pleasure today, Kelley.
Pleasure's all mine, man. And really enjoyed it. I love what you're doing.
Appreciate it, man. We'll wrap this thing up.